right, it is Wednesday, so we are back with Seminole Sidelines reeling them in recruiting report edition of Seminole Sidelines. My name is Pat Burnham, and I am joined by Osceola recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein. Fish, how you doing, man?
Doing all right.
All right, we got a lot to talk about. KJ Bolden, LJ McCray, the commitment of 2026 prospect Darrell Trey Bell to Florida State last night. We got comments from some of the players that Florida State had in over the weekend we want to talk about. Obviously, there has been some commitments on some prospects that Florida State was recruiting and decommitments. We'll talk to Fish about those guys, see if he thinks Florida State is still in it with those guys or would have interest. But Fish, before we get started, I think we got to start with what everybody in college football is talking about, and it's down there in your neck of the woods. I have not gotten a chance to talk to you about the misery that was Miami on Saturday night when they decided to run the ball on 3rd and 10, 33 seconds to go. Mario runs it. They fumble. Georgia Tech scores in 2 plays. Has that settled down in Miami? Has the talk of that settled down? What are some of the things you are hearing from just the guys you're around, and what were your thoughts on that?
First off, I felt like it was deja vu. I kind of was tired. The game was about a minute 30 left. I fell asleep, and then I woke up, and it reminded me of what happened with Florida State with Jacksonville State at the time. I know they're different situations, but the results to wake up and you're like, wait a second, how did this team lose? Is just crazy. I mean, people talk about the, not taking the knee. How do you let a defensive back get, a wide receiver get behind a defensive backfield that bad? Like, hey, everybody's like, keep the guy in front of you, and worst case scenario, you tackle him before he gets down. But it was a total disaster from all points, and I think that the fans are still pissed off, but. You know what? They got another game this week where they, if they beat North Carolina, I think most people will forget about it.
Yeah. Any chance? The players were visibly upset on the sidelines. Any chance this affects Mario being able to get his team to respond the right way? I mean, any ripple effects from that?
Yeah, I think if he had last year's team, I think it would be bad news for them because they had a lot of cancers on their team last year, and you know how that is if you have guys that are just negative people, but I think he has a lot stronger group inside that locker room that they could probably overcome something as bad as this. And we'll find out this weekend. But I do think they have leaders on that team this year that they didn't have last year, and it'll be a little different moving forward.
All right, well, let's jump into it on some of Florida State's recruits. They had a ton of guys in this weekend for Virginia Tech, including KJ Bolden, Luke Cromenhawk, Ricky Knight III, all three. Obviously, those guys are committed. I believe Jaden Todd was here, Jonathan Daniels, although we didn't get a chance to speak to all of those guys. We spoke to some of them. But probably the two we'll start with, and we'll start with KJ Bolden because he seems to be somebody that everyone has questions about. Obviously, he has gone to Georgia since on an unofficial visit since committing to Florida State. He's gone to Auburn since committing to Florida State. You and I talk a lot about what players do as opposed to what they say, and we're going to talk a little bit about both with KJ. His comment, Fish, to Osceola after the game on Saturday night at Doak Campbell Stadium was, "I'm committed to Florida State. I'm here right now. I'm going through the recruiting process. You only get to do it one time. So you get to go and visit other schools and check out other places that you've made the right decision." And then he went on to say that overall, I'm committed to Florida State right now. And those were kind of the tone and text of his conversations. And then, of course, you appreciate his honesty. He did mention he broke down the game, offense, defense, and special teams. So he was paying attention. He talked about the atmosphere being crazy and how coming back as a committed prospect to Florida State was a better experience than coming back as he had people asking him for autographs, and people know who he is now. But he also mentioned that he is going to go to the Alabama-Auburn game, the Iron Bowl, in late November. He does plan to be back. He said he'd be back on Florida State's campus for the Miami game on November 11th. Said if Riley Leonard was indeed playing quarterback for Duke, that he would be back for the Florida State-Duke game. But that would kind of determine whether he came back from that game. He wants to see Riley Leonard. But anyway, so what are your thoughts on what KJ had to say? And, how do you we had a debate about this at our Osceola staff meeting. About half of us think his recruitment is over. The other half do not. Can you break the tie for us?
Yeah, I think that you got to let these guys just do their thing. Norvell has a different approach to recruiting than somebody like Dabo Swinney. If this kid was committed to Clemson, he'd have to shut it down. That's just how Dabo believes. When you allow them to have that open door policy and the way that Norvell recruits these kids, you're going to have these questions all the way till National Signing Day. I don't think he had to commit early. But he did, and I think that's because he really, really likes Florida State. He showed up on campus a bunch of times. Part of this deal going all the way to the end, though, is he's going to take visits, and I don't blame him. I mean, with this NIL deal that's going on, and you look at Florida State's secondary, and that's kind of been a weakness. This kid should use that as leverage to continue to get more and more NIL, and this is part of what you have to deal with in this NIL era. He's just doing what's best for him, and it's a business decision now. I think he will stick with Florida State. It's just, like I said, he didn't have to commit to Florida State early. You know that these other schools were going to continue to pressure him to come on campus. You had that expectation. He hasn't wavered. I haven't seen anything from him where he's wavered at all in his decision. So my thinking is he sticks with Florida State in the end.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that obviously you pay attention to the fact that he could be back here twice in the next 4 weeks. Listen, I don't blame him for wanting to go to the Iron Bowl. I've always wanted to go to the Iron Bowl, and I have not had a chance to do that. I certainly don't blame him for that. That's a historic game and a really great atmosphere. And obviously that same weekend, Florida State's playing at Florida, so Florida State will not be at home for him to be at that game. All right, so Fish, LJ McCray, the 2024 defensive end from Daytona Beach Mainland High School, was on campus for his official visit. He had taken official visits to Georgia, Florida, Miami, and Auburn this summer. My first question to you will be, how big is it an advantage? He's going to make a decision sometime after October 18th. That's his birthday. He does not want to make he said after his visit this weekend, we spoke to him on Sunday, that he does not want to make that decision on his birthday. He wants to play that a little bit longer. Probably towards the end of October, he will have a decision. But first of all, how big do you think it is an advantage for Florida State to have that last official visit, because he says he's not taking it anymore. He does not take an unofficial visit at this point until he makes his decision anywhere else. So what do you make of Florida State having the only in-season official visit and the last official visit?
I think it's huge. You want to leave be the one that leaves the last impression on the kid. He's a major need. I really hope for their sake that they're putting a big emphasis on him, because they need defensive linemen. We've discussed this. They've kind of struggled this year. I don't put that on coaches. Defensive linemen, everybody wants. A lot of times it's just where a kid's located and certain situations that help you out with those type of players. But let's be real. When you're a big-time D lineman, you become a major priority. I mean, every time after signing day, coaches are like, hey, do you have a pass rusher? Do you have a tackle? Like, those are the unicorns of recruiting. And this kid's got all the skill set to be a very good defensive lineman at the college level. So I think that getting him on campus last, being able to get your hooks in him and sell the importance of how important he is to their signing class, I think it's good for Florida State.
Yep, and I do too. I said it. I think it usually is, and it doesn't guarantee anything. No, we see it. See that every December and January, February, for that matter. Now, listen, he seems to be a very grounded kid, Fish. He has no real tells when you talk to him about. I know we tried to pin him in on, hey, we know you've taken 5 visits. Are you down to 3 kind of thing? And he said it's definitely 5 right now. I might come down in a couple of weeks and narrow it down, but as of right now, it's definitely all 5. But he did say about FSU, they've always been up there. definitely wouldn't have taken an official visit if I wasn't serious about it. So it was just getting up here and seeing it one last time before I make a decision. He talked to Mike Norvell. He said he liked the way Florida State creates mismatches for its defensive linemen. They definitely talked to him about using them across the entirety of the defensive line. Should he come to Florida State, obviously determined on situations, which means, listen, they probably got some plans to use him as an inside pass rusher as he, in certain nickel situations. But listen, he did say that honestly, his comment was honestly, it was a little bit better than I expected. Talking about the official visit, I've been here multiple times. It was good to spend time with the players, alone, away from the coaches, and just building relationships and see how the people truly were away from the football facility. They did pair him with KJ Kirkland and KJ Sampson, both true freshmen on the defensive side of the ball. Those kids told him that they've really been enjoying their time at Florida State, and it's pretty much the same thing as what they were getting what they were told is what they're getting since they've been here. So just your thoughts on what LJ had to say, and how do you? I mean, it's hard to read the tea leaves with him, right? I mean, it's.
I think. His father was a high school football coach, and he's been through this process a bunch of times with top-rated recruits when he was at Boyd Anderson High School. I just think that means a lot with this kid as far as recruiting, that his dad's probably told him, listen, you don't want to really put out one school or another, just because he wants to keep it open, probably keeps away from the negative recruiting. The dad probably figures out that there'll probably be negative recruiting if the kid says one school leans this way or that way. So I think the kid's handling it the right way. You wish more kids would handle their recruitment this way, where it's kind of open and they don't really lead a media group on.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's I think everybody's anticipating. I think everybody will be parsing tweets and everything else the next 3 weeks until he makes his decision. But we will keep you posted on what we learned about that. But I think it was, as you said, Fish, I think it was a good for Florida State to get that last visit, because it is the last thing the kid's going to remember. And the other part of that is the other official visits had not, they took place back in June. So they're way off. So he will remember the Florida State visit a little bit clearer than the others. All right, so Fish, Florida State did reel one in last night. They got the commitment of their second 2026 prospect, Darrell Bell, the third, Trey Bell, a safety wide receiver from Goldman High School down there in Miami. You don't want to overhype a 2026 commitment, because so much can change with the recruiting process. Now that he's committed to Florida State, as a sophomore, he may get more attention and will get more attention because of that. If there were some schools that weren't aware of him, but he's down there in your neck of the nape. What are your thoughts on Bell? I really liked his film, but you've seen him in person, and do you think he's a safety, a wide receiver? Too early to tell.
Yeah, well, he's one of those guys that's versatile enough to play on both sides of the ball, and I like taking these type of recruits because you sign them and worry about where to place them later. He comes from a program that's never had a Division I prospect. The coach there has done a phenomenal job. When I first got in this business, Goldman was basically everybody's homecoming queen. They'd go out and beat this team 70-0, and where that program has come, that they've got a Division I prospect that's going to Florida State. If you had ever told me that over the last 15 years, I would tell you you're lying. So this kid's a very good football player. He's done it at the highest levels of, down here where they're at, and he has a chance to be a very good football player at the next level as well.
Yeah, I usually don't get excited about 2026 kids, and I had not seen this kid's film, and I did watch it. And he does not look like a 10th grader. He's an explosive player, good size. He's listed as 6'1" or 6 foot, depending on who you're researching him on, what service. And let's see, he runs really fast. He's very explosive. Seems to have some natural instincts as the defender, just finding his way to the ball. Physical when he gets there. And obviously he's got natural ball skills on offense. When you watch his film, that makes some incredible catches. So listen, you don't ever know how these things are going to go. He's over 2 years away from being able to sign with Florida State. So we'll see how this transpires over the course of the next couple of years. But as you know, Fish, these recruiting cycles are faster than ever. Hope the NIL will probably slow some of that down over the course of the next couple of years, but certainly a big get for Florida State. They were excited about it, as you could tell from all the tweets and retweets that the staff did after Daryl or Trey announced on Monday night or Tuesday night that he was committing to Florida State. So he joins Dexter Carter's son as the second commitment, I believe, for 2026. But never too early. The recruiting process is ongoing always for all the we don't want to make too much of it, but we did want to let you know that they had gotten a commitment from Mr. Bell, and we'll see how it goes over the next couple of years. All right, so we had some other prospects on campus this past weekend. Listen, I watched Kai Ellis, the 2026 offensive tackle prospect from Cartersville, Georgia, just because of after I was watching Trey, I just said, well, I'm going to watch more 2026. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch him. Kyle Ellis, 6'4", 290. He's a prospect that I really like that was here on campus. His sophomore film is unbelievable for an offensive lineman, and of course he's huge for an offensive lineman, physically gifted. But he had a good time. It was a great atmosphere at Doak Campbell. FSU ran the ball amazing, and I love the family feeling. We get that a lot on these visits from these kids, Fish. But probably the more important offensive lineman that was on campus was Zaire Addison, 6'5", 270, four-star offensive tackle for 2025 from Tampa's Sumner High School, or Riverview, Florida, Sumner High School. The offensive line took a big step in this game, and the run blocking, from the run blocking standpoint, there was not much pressure for Jordan Travis either, as they were good in pass protection as well. The environment was great, and Coach Alex Atkins and his group showed great hospitality for me and my family. I'm glad I came back here for a game. Go Noles. Florida State is rolling, and the team will go as far as what the offensive line will take them. Just I know that you are a big fan of Addison's. What are your takes on the importance of getting him to campus for a game?
Yeah, you're talking about one of the top 2 or 3 linemen for the class of 2025 in Florida, and he's one of the. It's a good year actually for linemen. Was very good at the Under Armour and Rivals camps earlier this year, so that's where he got his big jump in the offseason. Camps are great, but now he's doing it on the field as well. He's a good-looking prospect. That's what you want guys to look like when they're heading into their junior year. He's going to be a big kid. He's built the way you want offensive lineman built, very big in the lower body, powerful, has all the physical tools, and he would be a very big get for them in the 2025 class.
Yeah, he had some impressive offers, as you can imagine, being, as Fish just said. Obviously, another 2025 kid that they left an impression on was Tavion Swint, the running back from Osceola, Kissimmee, Florida, 4-star, 105 national, 12th in the state, 8th best running back in the nation for 2025. Fish, his quote, "This is my favorite team," and he meant growing up. They got my eye open for when I come back. So obviously a kid that's committed to UCF. He's already planning on coming back. He got to witness Trey Benson break the rock in the locker room and really enjoyed his game day experience. I did go back and watch a little bit of his film again this morning. He kind of reminds me of a smaller version of Trey Benson. He's listed as 5'10". I don't think the kid's 5'10", but I think he's a little bit shorter than that. But he's compact. He's a physical running back. He's got the ability to make people miss, but it will run over you too. But just where do you think he sits on Florida State's board for 2025, and what does that experience? Does that experience help Florida State if it's somebody they want to pull the trigger on and take a commitment from?
Yeah, it definitely can't hurt. He comes from a program that kids are usually tougher than. I don't want to say certain parts of the state of Florida are softer than others, but he comes from a program that believes in running the football. They've always been physical. They'll pound the ball in there. So his size, even at his size, he runs hard. He's a physical back. I think it'd be good for them. I think they need 2 backs in this class. I think Benson's gone. There's always a possibility that, at some point, Toa Philly, he's either loves Florida State so much that he doesn't care where he's on the depth chart, but I could see him looking for another opportunity to start somewhere at another program if he doesn't get a chance to start this year. So they could have some attrition there, so they could need a couple backs in that class as well moving forward. In 2025, you're talking another year. The guys that are on campus now too will be gone. Toe Philly would definitely be gone at that point as well because he's going into senior year.
Yeah, another kid we want to talk about that was on Florida State's campus in June for an official visit was Jalewis Solomon, the athlete, the DB wide receiver from Schley County High School in Ellaville, Georgia, committed to Auburn in August, decommitted yesterday. Is this a kid that you would like to see Florida State go back in on, or do you think they'll go back in on him? I believe they were recruiting him as a DB. But obviously, because they have a lot of receivers, as we've talked about, we think they're saving a spot for Jeremiah Smith. But what are your thoughts on Jalewis decommitting from Auburn and where he sits with Florida State?
Yeah, Florida State could, if they're looking at him as a DB, I would take him. I think they need to improve that room. We've seen, especially this year, guys have not lived up to the what we thought they would do. They need to improve that room overall. They've done a very good job with this class, landing Bolden. You land a kid like this, you land a Jabari Howard. All of a sudden, these guys come in and you infuse all that talent. You could have a much improved defensive backfield all of a sudden next year where you don't have to wait or even take kids out of the portal. These guys, it's already been shown with Conrad Hussey. If you have talent and you're good, you'll get on the field, you can make an impact right away. So I think that adding a guy like a Jalewis Solomon would be another great addition. They need more DBs. With the way all these teams throw the football, the spread offenses, you can never have enough defensive backs.
Yeah, well, and listen, Conrad Hussey, I think he just played his way out of a red shirt on Saturday because that was his fourth game appearance of the season, and he played 26 snaps, which is about 40% of his snaps for the season, if I'm thinking right, if I remember correctly. And he played really good, and I think that you're right. I think that they need to keep him rolling. All right, so another kid that Florida State was interested in. That there was a lot of chatter about because he decommitted and plays with a Florida State commit. But Nye Carr, the wide receiver from Colquitt County High School, who plays with tight end commit Landon Thomas. Obviously, when he decommitted from Georgia, there was a lot of question about whether Florida State might be involved. You're a huge proponent of show me where you are, not what you're saying. And this is a kid that obviously had a chance to come to Florida State, ends up at the Miami game, and ends up committing to Miami that night. Do you think it's over with Nye Carr? Do you think Florida State's got any interest at this point, or would go back in on him?
It seemed like Florida State was, I don't want to say slow playing them. It seems with their need at wide receiver right now, I don't think there's that big of a need. He's more of, an addition to an already very good wide receiver class. Remember, you have the guys from last year, Vandreas Jacobs, Hakeem Williams. Now you have McCoy in this year's class. You have some of the other guys that they've brought in this year's class. They've got a lot of these guys that are similar. He fits kind of the same mold as some of the receivers they already have. So I think it's more of let's wait and see what happens the rest of the year. They could always probably, recruit this kid all the way to the end, send him an NIL thing, not a national letter of intent on signing day, and pull the kid on signing day if they really, really wanted him. I think Jeremiah Smith, I've said all along, is their number one priority. I think the kid that committed to Texas A&M, Cam, he's another one, Cameron. Those two guys I think are probably at the top of their board and what they're willing to wait out for. And if this other kid, they want him, and then they could probably pull him if they kind of still show interest between now and National Signing Day.
All right, and one more 2025 kid. Just saw this come across this morning that he was here this weekend. Is 4-star wide receiver prospect Kobe Howard. He's 6'1", 174 down there in South Davie, Florida, Western High School. Well, originally from Pensacola, and Florida State had offered him there. But he said FSU was awesome. I had a great time hanging out with other big-time recruits in the 24 and 25 class. Coaches always show mad love whenever I'm there. Their message is always keep doing what you're doing and put in the work. They're going to keep recruiting me hard to the very end. I'm the number one guy on the board, and they have been with me from the beginning, even through my injury. They never wavered. So what are your thoughts on Kobe Howard as a player? And obviously he's a Rivals top 250, rated the 193rd best player overall in the class of 2025.
What's crazy is Kobe was a Pensacola kid. I believe he's now at Western High School.
Yep, he is.
I don't know how a kid from Pensacola ends up in Davie, Florida, but this is called school choice. You get to choose whatever school you want. I mean, he may as well chose Key West High School to really go the furthest away from where he lives. Kobe's a very, very good athlete, very good football player. You know, he was injured at the Miami camp a couple of years ago. Everybody was wondering if he would ever play football again. He's continued to play and play at a pretty nice level. I think he is another player I really like. He's another guy that can play on offense or defense. You can never have enough of these kids. We talk about it all the time. You want skill kid. You don't want to recruit a safety, and that's all he can ever play. Because if he can't play anything else and it doesn't work out, he's not going to make it. So if you could find these guys that could play wide receiver, corner, safety, you're going to find a position for them once they step on campus. They'll find a position. That's why these guys are so valuable and versatile, because they play multiple positions in high school. You know that when you recruit them, that you don't have to worry about where to put them until they step on campus. And if they're good enough, they'll get on the field at one of those positions you recruited them to.
Yeah, the good news for Florida State is it looks like he is going to South Bend, I believe, this weekend to watch Notre Dame and USC. Obviously, he's a national recruit, but he did say that he plans to be back for both the Duke and the Miami games. So obviously, Fish, that goes back to what you and I have always said is show me where you're at, not what you're saying, and so show me what you're doing, not what you're saying. So listen, it was a big weekend for Florida State. We will. Fish, before we get ready to go, obviously what we'd like to end with is anybody else that you're keeping an eye on, anybody that we've missed today that you think has an update that warrants mentioning?
No, I think right now we've gone over all the guys. I mean, the one kid I think eventually over the next couple of weeks may pull the triggers, the Howard kid out of Norland High School. He's a big-time recruit for them. He plays in the secondary, so I think he's someone that you could look at in the next few weeks, possibly making his college choice. Florida State needs DBs. We discussed this. He would be a very good addition to a DB class that could end up, top 5 in the country if some of these guys decide to go there.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's never a slow time for recruiting, as we can tell. We talked about guys from 2024, 2025, and 2026. If you're not an Osceola subscriber, please go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com and check us out. The YouTube content is free. While you're here, we'd also like for you to subscribe to the Osceola YouTube channel. You can actually sign up for alerts for when we're going to do shows. We do a live first impression show after every game. We have Seminole Sidelines on Sunday, which is a game recap with members of the Osceola staff. And obviously, Fish and I are doing our Reeling Them In segments on Wednesdays. And, of course, there's plenty of content on the Osceola. We've got a recruiting board for Syracuse week, what the kids are saying after their visits. Kids that didn't come to Florida State. Obviously, we'll have our visitors list. Fish just posted a Fish Bits piece on the premium recruiting board that's fluid and interactive, and you're able to go there and get Fish's thoughts on recruits that maybe we didn't talk about today. But plenty of content on the Osceola website at theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com. It'll get you to the same place. And then, of course, please subscribe to the Osceola YouTube channel. You can also watch these shows on Osceola Twitter or X, and then Osceola Facebook. But Fish, man, as always, appreciate you taking the time. I know you got a lot going on as we prepare for another week of high school football across the state of Florida. But we'll be back next Wednesday with another edition of Seminole Sidelines, a Reeling Them In version, and talk more about Florida State recruiting. We hope everyone has enjoyed the podcast/videocast, and we will see you next week.